What's going on, fellow backpackers? My name is Dan. So you're thinking about starting to use a frameless pack, but you're nervous about making the switch. Well, hopefully I can put your mind at ease and talk about all the things you need to consider when switching to a frameless pack. So I'm going to talk about all the benefits of using a frameless pack, as well as some of the considerations when making that switch, and I'm going to end on a few of the downsides. As usual, this video is not sponsored by anyone, and I will include some links in the description to all the companies that I can think of off the top of my head that make frameless packs. I'm sure I missed a few, so let us know if I missed anybody in the comments. Alright, so to start off with, the pack that I use is a Superior Wilderness Designs Frameless 30. This has 30 liters of space in the main body and an additional 8 liters on the outside between the front mesh pocket and the two side pockets. So I made the switch to a frameless pack really for two main reasons. The first one has to do more with volume. So I used to use this ULA Circuit. This is a traditional framed pack with a big beefy hip belt, and this one is 68 liters, so almost double the size of this SWD. But as I started to acquire more and more ultralight gear, that ultralight gear also just had a lot less volume to it, so I did not need 68 liters anymore. So I started to look at some packs that were a lot smaller and ultimately lighter for me. My second reason is probably a reason that many of you don't have. So I have a very large scar on the lower part of my abdomen, and the belt buckle from hip belts rests right on top of that scar. And even after just one day of hiking, just the constant friction on that scar really irritates it to the point of it being painful. And trust me, I have tried everything to mitigate that problem, but nothing has helped. So eventually I got to a point where if I wanted to continue backpacking, I had to switch to a pack that did not have a hip belt. And that's exactly what I do with this SWD. I do not use a hip belt at all. I'll talk more about hip belts a bit later, but those are my two reasons for switching to frameless. Okay, so as far as the benefits of switching to a frameless pack, there are quite a few of them, but I really see three main benefits. So number one, frameless packs, all things being equal, are generally going to be lighter than their framed counterparts. Now, I very much believe that having the lightest pack possible does not necessarily equal the most comfortable pack. You can have a pack that's a lot heavier, but still very comfortable for you. So weight does not always equal comfort. But still, shaving a lot of ounces off of your base weight is always a helpful thing, so weight is definitely a big benefit. The second benefit is that in a lot of ways, a frameless pack is just simpler. It's really just an empty bag that you fill with stuff and wear on your shoulders. There's not a whole lot to it as far as complicated design, so the simplicity of having a pack like this is just kind of nice. The last benefit is that frameless packs tend to be a little bit cheaper than framed packs. Now, of course, this depends on exactly what pack you're going with, but again, all things being equal, frameless packs do tend to be a little less expensive than traditional backpacking packs. All right, let's talk about some of the considerations when making the switch to a frameless pack. The first consideration that comes to mind is the fact that design-wise, frameless packs are all pretty similar. Like I said before, it's really just an empty bag that you put stuff in and wear on your shoulders. So in some ways, that makes the decision about which frameless pack to go with a little bit easier, because you don't have to worry about some larger design things like how well the frame is designed or how good the hip belt is and so on and so forth. And instead, you can just focus on those tiny little details that really matter to you. So for example, I really love this front mesh pocket. I love the mesh that they use. I love the way that they sew it on the pack. I love the fact that they have daisy chains on the shoulder straps and a bunch of other little tiny details that some companies might have those things that you want and others might not. Another consideration with frameless packs is how you pack the pack. And this is probably one of the most important things about frameless packs, because after all, it's again just an empty bag with no frame, so you have to use your gear to make sure that it is comfortable against your back. So packing a frameless pack is really trying to strike a balance between comfort, weight distribution, and ease of access to things that you need first when you open up the pack. Now, in my opinion, comfort is king, so that one always gets top priority. And the biggest thing you need to think about in terms of comfort is how comfortable things are going to be against your back. Since again, there is no back padding and no frame, so you got to put softer stuff against your back so it is comfortable for you while you're hiking. Now, in a previous video, I showed my summer gear loadout, including how I pack this thing and exactly what I put against my back, but I'm just going to show you a quick version of that right now. Well, I'm going to drop all this stuff any minute, so I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. So at the very bottom here, that gray stuff sack, is my top quilt, then I have my under quilt, my hammock, and my insulated jacket. And also, in between my top quilt and under quilt, I shoved my pillow in between there just to take up that gap because that tends to feel a bit better against my back. Now, what all of these things have in common is the fact that they're very soft, so they feel really nice against my back. And this was one of my biggest worries about switching to a frameless pack. I didn't know how I was going to like that, especially because I have always used some type of a foam back panel on all my packs, like on this circuit. So I wasn't sure if I was going to like not having that at all and just having my back directly against the material. But I will say that for me, it's been extremely comfortable. I have had absolutely no comfort issues whatsoever with this pack as long as I pack it appropriately and I'm not having something that is really hard against my back that's going to make it uncomfortable for me. And the rest of my packing philosophy, again, has to do with weight distribution and ease of access. So I'll try to put the heaviest items toward the center of the pack and as close to my back as possible, again, as long as it doesn't sacrifice comfort. And with ease of access, I will try to put the things that I need first near the top of my pack instead of buried at the bottom. But again, as long as that's not going to sacrifice something that's going to be comfortable as I'm hiking. Now, I know on some frameless packs like the Z-Packs Nero, it allows you to take a sit pad and with some shock cord, put that against your back. So if you're worried about having something comfortable against your back, this can also serve as a good alternative. And actually with this SWD, I can kind of do the same thing. There's some loops here on the side and on the bottom where I could route some shock cord through here if I wanted to and put my sit pad against it. But so far, again, I haven't felt like that's necessary. Everything for me has been very comfortable just using soft gear. Another consideration also has to do with packing, and that is giving your pack some structure. Because again, there is no frame to do that, so you have to rely on the gear that you pack into it to give it that structure. This also has never been a problem for me as long as I pack all my gear down in there really tightly and I make sure that all the compression straps are pulled tight, especially this top one to really squeeze everything down. Again, I've never had any issues with structure. Now, I know some people will take their sleeping pad and fold it and even inflate it a little bit and put it on the inside of their pack and even try to wrap it around the inside as much as possible to help give it some extra structure. Now, I use an underquilt with my hammock, so I don't bring a sleeping pad, but that is an option if you do bring one. And you can also, of course, use your sit pad if you want, and put that on the inside of the pack as well. I don't do that because I want to have access to my sit pad throughout the day, and it is a huge pain in the butt to not only try to get this out of your pack, but also especially to have to shove it back in there when you have a full pack. So I don't do that. Another really big consideration with a frameless pack is a hip belt, or in many cases, not having a hip belt at all. This SWD came with a very small little webbing strap that goes through these loops on the bottom of the pack. I have since taken mine off and lost it, so I'm sorry that I can't show you that, but just imagine a small little webbing strap. And the primary purpose of that is really to kind of bring the bottom of the pack a bit closer to your back and also keep it from like bouncing around as you're hiking, which I've never had a problem with, by the way, as far as bouncing. So it's not as great in terms of distributing the weight to your hips. And that's generally true for all kind of small little webbing strap style hip belts. I know this one is a bit debatable. Some people will claim that that small webbing strap still does wonders as far as putting some weight on your hips and taking it off of your shoulders, but it's still not going to do as great of a job as a traditional framed pack. Because keep in mind that the frame is there not only to give the pack some structure, but to really transfer that weight to the hip belt. And not to mention, the hip belt on a traditional backpacking pack like this is much, much beefier. So it does a much better job of really hugging your hips and again, transferring that weight. Some companies also make frameless packs with a much beefier hip belt. Superior Wilderness Designs makes one called their HB frameless pack, which stands for hip belt. So it's basically just a frameless pack with a much bigger hip belt. So ultimately, if using some type of a hip belt with a frameless pack is more comfortable for you, then by all means, go ahead and use it. Although I really enjoyed not having to use a hip belt at all. It's not only just easier and faster to get the pack on and off, but there's also just kind of a sense of freedom that comes with not having this thing just gripped around your abdomen all day long while you're hiking. Okay, so let's move on to some of the downsides of a frameless pack. And the first and possibly biggest downside is shoulder pain. The first time that I used a frameless pack was on a 4-day trip, so the pack was a little bit heavier, and my shoulders were in some severe pain. It really hurt. But I don't want to scare you away from frameless packs, because I will say that as time went on, the shoulder pain that I experienced started to diminish more and more. And at this point, my shoulders are still sore. That's just always going to happen, but it's not nearly as bad as the first time that I tried a frameless pack. Now, most companies making frameless packs will have the shoulder straps be fairly wide so that they can distribute the weight across a larger surface area on your shoulders. I would say this one isn't especially wide, but some of the other ones I've seen do have really wide shoulder straps, so that could be a really big plus to diminish some shoulder pain. Another downside of frameless packs is the relatively lower carrying capacity in terms of weight. So I think Superior Wilderness Design says that this one has a comfortable carrying capacity of like 18 to 20 pounds, which I think is kind of accurate. It really, to be honest, it just depends on ultimately how much weight you can comfortably carry on your shoulders. So I can load this thing up to 30 pounds if I really want to, but it's definitely not going to be comfortable for me. Even 20 pounds is a bit of a stretch for me. I'm a short, skinny guy, so I just can't carry that much weight. So if your base weight is in the 15 to 20 pound range or more, then you might want to think twice about using a frameless pack, at least not until you can get that base weight down a bit. Now, my own base weight is about 10.5 pounds, and that works out just fine for me with this pack. But again, ultimately, it's just going to depend on how much you can comfortably carry on your shoulders. Another downside with frameless packs is back sweat. See what I mean? Sweaty! Now, many frameless packs use either X-Pack material, which is what this one is, or DCF, both of which are waterproof materials. So when you have a non-breathable waterproof material up against your back, yes, it is going to sweat, which is exactly what I have experienced with this pack. Although in reality, it's not that much worse than I've experienced with this foam back panel on the circuit. I still sweat quite a lot with this thing too. And I'll also say that in the winter time, it's not that bad as well. Mainly because I'm wearing many extra layers that do have breathable material, so my back is able to breathe a little bit better, and not to mention it's cold outside, so I generally just don't sweat as much in the winter anyway. You can also try to lessen that a bit if you, again, use some type of like a sit pad against your back. This will certainly breathe a lot better than this material, but ultimately, with a frameless pack like this, you just have to kind of learn to embrace your back sweat. The other downside is the fact that, again, you do need to put a lot more thought into packing a frameless pack to make sure that it's comfortable for you. Although I will say that once you do have your system down for how you want to pack this, then all you have to do is keep doing the same thing over and over again. So it's not a long-term kind of a downside. I would say it's more of like an initial downside. So if you're still not sure whether or not you want to go with a frameless pack, I would suggest that you just use your current backpacking pack and, if possible, take out the frame and take out the hip belt. That's exactly what I did with this circuit. You're able to remove the frame and the hip belt. So I just wore it on my shoulders and I got to experience what it would be like to have a frameless pack like that. And even if you have a pack that you cannot take out the hip belt or the frame or anything else like that, at least just unbuckle the hip belt and see how it feels on your shoulders. Because again, even if you're using like a little webbing strap, most of that weight is going to be on your shoulders. And that's going to be one of the biggest considerations that you need to make when choosing whether or not a frameless pack is going to be right for you. Well, as always, stick around for some bloopers. Thank you so much for watching. And the next time you're on the trail, maybe with a frameless pack, have fun out there. You need to take into that was fine. That was all right, right? That was a whole lot lighter, heavier. Start over. Shh, shh, shh. To it that you need to consider, and dog's gonna mess up my shot again. The dog today. I don't think this is gonna work. Why is all this material so slippery? And in addition to that, told ya, fill up that, damn it! Ugh, this is just stupid. Have a, I didn't burp that time.